How do you tell a story through a fashion collection, whether that be a runway show or your first drop, and get people actually invested in your work and to buy your clothing? The only reason successful brands from Gucci to the North Face can sell 1 million logo tees is because they've already earned the public's emotional and financial investment.
Come on home, girl, he said with a smile.
If you think people just buy clothing for a logo, you're wrong. People buy from brands for perceived status, perceived quality and value, or they're invested in the lifestyle that brand is selling. Fundamental aspects to a brand, all built through having a narrative. Storytelling. I watch runway shows all day. I work professionally in fashion, I read about fashion, I review fashion, and I love teaching about fashion. And when I'm watching a runway show or looking at a collection, there's 3 main elements I look for that tell me a designer knows how to create an impactful body of work that will speak to the customer. And if you learn how to implement these 3 things I'm going to talk about into your design process, you will become a better designer. So number 1, have clear influences across your body of work that call back to your initial research and development. A lot of designers have mood boards, others collages or notes, some way of getting their initial ideas down on paper. And the initial research at this beginning stage allows you to get out all of your bad ideas so you can really hone in and focus on the good ones. The concepts for your work that you want to explore more in depth and eventually culminate into your final designs. But don't rush your final designs before you do the research. I know there's the video of Rick Owens out there saying,
learn how to make clothes. Learn how to make clothes, learn how to make clothes. Don't do sketches and collages, because that's bullshit. I mean, anybody can do that. You have to learn how to make clothes.
And yes, making clothing is essential to getting better at making clothing, but doing research and sketching extensively is an essential part of the design process that just about every other designer in the world has as their initial stage. Their first step, the foundation of their work, from Cristobal Balenciaga to Christian Dior. Not all of us can be Rick Owens, so put in the effort for your initial research and that will shine through in the final product. Rush through that research stage and your collection will be sloppy, it'll be vague, and it will be easily forgettable. For example, a heavily research-based designer is someone like John Galliano, who developed 15 new couture techniques for the 2024 artisanal collection. A collection in which you can clearly see the depth of historical research, fabric manipulation research, and the exploration of 2 artists, Brisset and Kees van Dongen, who influenced different aspects of this collection for John Galliano, yet complemented each other perfectly. Not because these artists were best friends or anything, but because John Galliano spent 12 months weaving these artists and these influences together to create such an impactful collection. A year's worth of extensive research allowing for many different references and influences to come together so perfectly. And if you want to learn more about that amazing collection, I have a video about it here where I fawn over it like Nick Carraway fawns over Jake Gadsby. But what does research look like for a new designer, somebody who doesn't have all the couture resources that John Galliano has? It looks like you filling in a 100-page sketchbook with all of your initial ideas, your random thoughts, your sketches of nature and architecture and anything that inspires you. Then get another 100-page sketchbook and fill that with the best ideas from your first sketchbook. Start experimenting with fabric manipulation and print manipulation. In that sketchbook, put your silhouette inspiration and initial sketches for your collection. You're going to want an in-depth exploration of your overarching concept to figure out what it is you're really trying to say.
I'm trying to tell you something.
Because if you're not saying something with your work, whether it's an entire collection or one product, why should anybody buy into it? People go to Patagonia because they feel like they're buying clothing that will last, is environmentally friendly, and that they're a part of the outdoor community. It's a story that Patagonia has built, and a narrative that says, if you buy from us, you don't buy into fast fashion. You care about the environment.
I'm doing my part too.
So when you're building your clothing brand, your collection, or just your singular product, your initial research and how much exploration and curiosity you put into it at those initial stages to figure out what exactly you're trying to say will be evident in the final product and will help you to achieve the next big characteristic of a narrative brand or collection that I look for, Visual cohesion. Just as all of our fabrics and garments are sewn together by thread, your designs should have a common thread weaving them together. And that common thread should be a consistent design philosophy or theme. Visual cohesion can come in many different forms dependent on the designer, but some of the least impactful collections that I have seen have something in common. They should have been edited down to allow for a more cohesive body of work. Most of the time, cohesion is lost as a collection grows in size and scope, but not always. Small collections can lack in cohesion as well, especially for young designers trying to start their own brands who aren't harsh enough on themselves and the quality of their work to really create a cohesive collection.
It's just not very good, is it?
So don't fall into that trap, learn how to self-critique. But like I said, extensive research in the beginning sets you up for success in the end. Those recurring elements, motifs, fabric manipulation techniques, artistic principles, everything that you explored in your initial research will serve as the thread weaving your looks together, and will hopefully provide great visual cohesion and a connected body of work. Using Sean McGurr's debut McQueen collection as an example, there were so many influences in that collection that were not connected through a central theme or idea, it lost all impact for me. In the collection, we saw direct references to Lee McQueen's designs, we saw car mechanic influences from Sean McGurr's father, J.W. Anderson influence from his time working there, yet Sean talked about how this collection was supposed to be punk,
Meredith, you never told me your old grandpa used to be a huge piece of shit.
yet lighthearted, yet also about the people you meet on the street who you just want to talk to and get to know. There was no consistency in the theme or the messaging around the theme. It also directly contradicted the very focused and narrative design philosophy of the McQueen house. Now let's contrast that with Alessandro Michele's Twinsburg collection, which is a great example of visual cohesion. Also because that was Alessandro's last collection at Gucci, so he had years of experience to grow into this position, unlike Sean. So we can see how time will allow someone to develop that sense of consistency and cohesion.
I am me. She is she.
In the Twinsburg show, models walked the runway like any other. Yet at the end, the wall lifted up, revealing another fashion show taking place on the other side with all of the models' twins walking. Then all the models did the final walk hand in hand with their twin. It was beautiful, and if you haven't seen the show, go watch it. It's very moving. The concept Alessandro Michele explored here was how clothing, like twins, can look identical but have completely different characteristics on the individual. Different qualities shine through dependent on the wearer. An exploration of how clothing is worn, amplified by the use of twins on the runway, while of course being in Alessandro Michele's very distinct and well-developed design language, which has taken him a long time to hone. Yet that time and experience is how you develop consistency as a designer, and how you learn to create more impactful bodies of work. There's really no cheat codes to hard work and honing a skill.
Work like hell.
But what Alessandro and other successful designers are excellent at, the third element which I look for, is world building, a concept you see in cinema and literature and video games, which is also very important in fashion. You walk into a Walmart and you know exactly where you are. You walk into a Saint Laurent and you definitely know you're not in a Walmart. Building a world around your brand comes from the development of a personal style and a brand identity through visual cohesion and consistency. You can see how these characteristics build off of each other. Without one, you don't have the other. Knowing how and where each piece you design fits into your world, how it's being presented and advertised, and being consistent in your messaging is key to delivering impact with your clothing. Ask yourself, who's living in your world? What do they do? What's life like in your world? And how do your garments complement and exude that lifestyle? Now, don't mistake this for a target market. Your target market should be everybody with a pulse. Coca-Cola doesn't target young professionals between 25 to 30 years old, making 50 to 60K a year, who like to go on picnics on the weekend. They target everybody with a mouth. And Nike doesn't target athletes specifically. They target everybody with a body who can wear clothing. So this isn't about target market, it's about world building. Gucci is aware that whoever steps foot into one of their stores immediately knows they're in a Gucci. Same with Nike, Patagonia, Hermes, whoever. Each of these brands are not fundamentally that different. They all sell clothing and compete in a similar market. but they are distinct. What in your design philosophy and brand messaging makes you distinct? What about your brand is going to get you a cut of that market share at the end of the day? That's not an answer I can tell you, but through time, research, and honing your identity as a designer, the answer to that will begin to emerge. And a big part of crafting a brand narrative through research, cohesion, and world building is the concept of immersion. And immersion was going to be its own category, but I felt like it fell under world building pretty well. So immersion is going to be characteristic 3.5. Immersion in a brand is something that can really sell a collection or can really break it. This applies to runway shows, in-store experiences, your website, the overall feeling of your brand that involves all the senses. Now, I bet you haven't thought about what your brand or your product smells like, unless it's a fragrance. But if you bought a shirt and it smelled terribly, you'd probably never buy from that brand again. Smell is important. You have a song that whenever you hear it, it transports you to a time in your past where you're able to experience a certain feeling again and again when you first heard that song. A song can serve as a sort of time machine, a connection to a moment otherwise lost. I have dozens of soundtracks and songs that take me to a place in time. Music is a powerful vehicle for emotional connection that can be applied to the presentation of a fashion collection, or can be used in store or online or on your social channels, anywhere that a potential customer can interact with your product. Music that really complements your work and calls back to that initial research phase and immerse the audience in the show, that will evoke an emotional response in the audience that you cannot buy, and it'll create patterns of recognition in their mind.
Who is the Greek demigod of medicine who believed that snakes' tongues had mystical healing powers?
Asclepius, of course. He had a staff with snakes intertwining all around that bitch.
So whenever they hear that specific song or sound, or they smell that distinct smell, see that certain color or any other distinctive trait of yours, they'll think of you. They'll think of your store or your show. When building your brand or designing your collection, think of immersion and how exactly people will be interacting with your product with each and every sense. For example, whenever I hear Adele's Hometown Hero, I'll think of the Margiela Artisanal 2024 collection. And whenever I see this orange or that blue, I'll think of Hermes and Tiffany, and I know you are too. Consistency, distinctiveness, emotional connection. You can have each individually, but when you have them all together, that's when people really begin to notice your work and form connections with your brand. It's what the major fashion houses have already built, and it's why they can sell 1 million logo tees. But for you who's taking all of this advice to heart, through your extensive research, your consistency, and your world building, you can create an emotional connection with your audience and beyond. You can expand a fashion business you're working on, or just understand runway shows better, or learn more about how this industry works. Or if you really take this all to heart, maybe you too can sell 1 million logo tees. Now, thank you for watching. If you've learned something from this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me to create more content, and I hope you have a great day.